Welcome to the JISS podcast. I'm very pleased this morning to have with me Major in the Reserves Alexander Grinberg. He is an expert on Iran and he's formerly of the IDF Military Intelligence Research Department. He holds a degree in Middle East and Islamic Studies and Arab language and literature from Hebrew University of Jerusalem. And Alexander is also a doctoral student in Iranian history at Tel Aviv University. We have lots to talk about when it comes to the Islamic Republic. I'm very pleased that you can join us this morning. How are you, Alexander?
Good morning, Jakob. How are you? Thanks for having me.
And my pleasure. So, look, I actually want to start with something that doesn't involve Iran's nuclear or missile programs, which we'll get to a little bit later. But I wanted to ask you about something that you very recently published on the JISS website. And this is about Iran's hidden influence in France. Now, the name of this article, and we'll have a link to it, is Iran's hidden influence, espionage, alliances, and the mechanics of chaos. And you talk about a new French investigation that exposes Tehran's covert networks spanning intelligence operations, campus recruitment. This is something we don't hear about very often when it comes to Iran, and criminal proxies. This is something that we actually have heard many warnings about from the Mossad and many plots using criminals in Europe to spy on and plot attacks on Jewish and Israeli targets. And this is all designed, according to your piece here, to destabilize France from within. So I'd love to hear your assessment about Iran's activities in France. Maybe we can start with that and then dive deeper into what's going on in Iran itself.
Yes, of course. Thank you for that question because the topic is very important, and I have a feeling, hopefully erroneous, but in Israel, everything that is not America is coming under the radar, and it is not interesting because we all hear France.
Right.
You tell Chutz la'aretz or abroad, it's America and the West and the rest.
Right.
But of course, all the activities, the disruptive activities of the Islamic Republic in Europe in general, in France in particular, are not new because Khomeini sojourned in France several years before the revolution. The Islamic Revolution was managed was led from behind in France.
Hmm.
And the goal today of Iran is akin to, yes, to the Soviet Union activities, also Russian activities today, because it's the same blueprint. It's creating of first of all, it's multifaceted. It
Right.
is many directions. It is networks of influence. They bribe a French academic world, French scientists. For example, there are pictures of one of French Orientalists whom I
Hmm.
met in Israel and in France, and he was. They took his picture, meeting with a guy from the Iranian embassy. Simply speaking, he's a case officer.
Uh-huh.
So, but again, it's let's first delve more into the meaning of agent of influence because
Right.
we use and abuse this term, but no one really understands. Agent of influence is someone who may work for us or for any other intelligence unbeknownst to himself, to the person. It's not an agent of intelligence when you really, you recruit a person, you train him or her to do something. No, it may be a writer and that he may diffuse ideas in the needed direction.
Right.
And to that purpose, to displease maybe to many our American listeners, and I'm saying that as an ex-Soviet, during the McCarthyism in America, never forget that at the same time, any person in the Soviet Union who was blamed for spying, you understand his fate. By contrast, in America, those who, about whom there were doubts whether they sympathized with the Soviet Union, they really sympathized with the Soviet Union, sincerely.
Right.
And I'm rest assured, the Soviet Union never ignored the sympathies of any famous American writer or artist because it was their tool. By the same token with Iran. So what they're doing with these networks of influence among the French Foreign Ministry, Quai d'Orsay, I'm talking about that. It's not only that
Uh-huh.
someone, right, that they sell them a narrative in a very sophisticated way. They're not saying we are let you support Iranian revolution. No, because these intelligence networks are run by the Minister of Intelligence in Iran. The latter is being run by reformists, so-called
Okay.
reformists, but the reformists and hardliners, just it's an old game, bad cop and good cop. So they say
Right.
something like that. Look, you know, those tough guys, they're really like, they're brutes. They're like, let's you talk with us because we are normal people. And you know, if something happens in Iran, it will be a terrible havoc and chaos. So let's prevent us because we both, as normal people, understand the danger of it. And this is why now I understand by hindsight why during the 12-day war with Iran, I saw narratives in this vein in France. So look,
Wow.
it's amazing, it's crazy. Both prime minister and another official, all army commanders, literally everyone said many times, our goal is not a regime change. It's upon the Iranian people to deal with the regime change.
Yeah.
And in France, I was reading one after another articles, academic or highbrow articles, saying that, arguing that Israel is working to reverse the Iranian regime and see what happened in Syria and Libya, and it's bad. So Israeli action is bad. So we all know
Not
that.
only bad, it's also Israel's being presented as some sort of demonic, destabilizing force. And I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
this is the Islamic Republic narrative, the little
yeah, yeah.
Satan narrative.
Exactly. And this is one. And there is a second, much darker side that Iran exploits actively criminal networks. And okay, we are not PC here, but the fact is that drug traffic in France is manipulated overwhelmingly by Algerian immigrants who also happen to hold Algerian nationality. As such, they are overseen by Algerian intelligence because Algeria, it's a really rogue Soviet-style regime. It's the only old school Arab regime that remains today. It's all like some
Very
real.
interesting. Uh-huh.
And Algeria has the capacity to blackmail the south of Europe, namely France, Spain, and Italy, with gas and with this control of the flow of illegal immigration. If something happens in Algeria, there will be terror actions in France, as it happened during the 90s. But Iran has always supported Algeria, and Algeria has always supported Iran since their revolution in 79 because of the common progressive style sounding rhetoric. Islamic
Right.
revolution. So it's not accidental that they support each other. But Iran, to work with the Arabs, the Iranians are not Arabs, so they need Algerian help. And now we see a organized campaign against two Jewish authors, Dov Maimon and Didier Long, who authored a book about the end of Jews in France.
Hmm.
It's not the musings, it's only results of the polls, of public opinion in France, and they both face an organized campaign and accusations of Islamophobia. We all understand what it means, and it was when you see the report, you see that this campaign is organized by the Muslim Brotherhood, Qatar,
Right.
Algerian trolls fabric, and Iranians. They are an Iranian agent of influence, like Shaheen Hazemi, who is like he's officially Algerian Iranian, who supports publicly Hamas in French, and he's also quoted in Iranian news agencies such as ISNA and IRNA. So everything is
This
clear.
is
And
this level of it.
nobody,
Yeah,
sorry,
this
nobody does nothing. That's the problem. It's
right.
okay.
That's what I wanted to ask. I mean, you're describing a level of infiltration and entrenchment that is truly alarming. And we, the Algerian-Iranian strategic cooperation, military, and the way that Iran undermines Algeria's neighbor Morocco. These are all well-established facts. But what the new information here, as far as I can tell, is this cooperation between the Algerian regime and the Islamic Republic on French soil. And based on what you're saying, French counterintelligence and French domestic security are not lifting a hand. They're just letting this all happen.
It's everything, unfortunately, is way more complicated. It's right what you say, but France is really paralyzed due to the incompetence and everything what we may hear about French presidency. As far as I understand, French security services are deeply frustrated because they cannot act without the president's approval. But if you have a situation when French counterintelligence intelligence, of course, know about the activities of all these nice guys, but if for the French foreign ministry, Kedose, it is okay that the guy who meets Iranian case officers, he also is advisor of the Quai d'Orsay. If it's normal, well, you can do nothing. I
Right.
think that what it must teach us, when I hear my practical conclusion is that I'm literally fed up with hearing all our Hasbara experts here who don't understand anything about Europe, and they're pretty certain that if only we work correctly and do things right,
Right.
then
Right.
we'll resolve our problems. So you see that runs very deep in Europe, and so we of course we have not said a word about Russian cooperation with Iran in Europe. And again, it's not against us, but it's like I keep your back, you keep mine. It's
Sure.
the
As part
same.
of their wider strategic cooperation
Yeah,
and
that like
right. So this is fascinating and disturbing. And the last question I have about France in particular is what does all of this mean in your view for the French Jewish community? Because if the infiltration is this deep, then it sounds like the danger is not only from Qatari propaganda and the Sunni Muslim Brotherhood. It sounds like the Islamic Republic is able to maybe utilize its terror networks to target the French Jewish community. And we also have an example, right, of Iran targeting a dissident rally. I think it was back in 2019,
yeah.
and they had sort of diplomats on the highways with bombs to try and take out this dissident rally. And that in itself should have resulted in the permanent expulsion of all, Iranian embassy staff from France. But in light of all of this sort of paralysis that you're describing, would you say that the French Jewish community is facing an increased level of threat from Iran and its various proxies and puppets in France?
I would say yes, because of course all these networks are in fact communicating vessels. Because one should never forget the Islamic Republic and the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. It's the same ideology. The fact that they are Shiites and those are Sunnis are just what we say in French, coloris local. It's something local affinity that bears no importance. It's
Right.
the same ideology. It's political Islam, which is a modern par excellence ideology, heavily influenced by modern thought, Marxist thought. It sounds very progressive. This is the reason for why Iranian agents and Iranians adhere easily to the left secular organizations because their Islam sounds respectable. They're not like these primitive birdies who call to kill all the kuffar. So they talk about civilization, dialogue of civilizations, progress against imperialism, colonialism, and Zionism, exactly as the Soviet
Right.
propaganda was sounding, because the
Right.
Soviet Union always refrained from overt anti-Semitic statements. To that person, I think everyone should read a great work by Isabella Tartakovsky, who writes in
Hmm.
Tablet, who's a researcher of the Soviet anti-Semitic demonization of Zionism in Israel. And at the same time, they were smart enough not to say things that would endanger them.
Wow, very, very interesting because we always hear about how the progressive left is used by the Islamists. And here you're talking also about a reverse trend where they themselves are influenced by Soviet and modern progressive propaganda. That's a fascinating, I would call it a, sub-topic, which probably merits
Of
its own
course.
podcast.
Look, sorry
Uh,
to interrupt you. That again, when I look at the Iranian activities, look, they use overtly playbook of KGB. All this information were специальные мероприятия, special measures, they call it, like
yeah,
injection of narrative,
yeah,
work with the journalism. It's the bread and butter of KGB.
yeah.
This is the real intelligence.
Right. So they just had to apply it in their own way, but the playbook was already there. Very, very interesting. Let me ask you about Iran itself. We hear a lot of conflicting assessments where several months after the 12-day war, which to all intents and purposes, according to all the assessments I heard in the weeks and months after the war, Iran's nuclear program severely damaged the main uranium enrichment sites, severely damaged Iran's ballistic missile program, severely degraded the whole nuclear scientific community, the IRGC, the military command, the damage absolutely, phenomenal. The intelligence infiltration that Israel was able to conduct in the years leading up to this operation, and then to act on this intelligence in real time is really, I see no precedent for this actually in modern warfare. So the achievements are without any question. But now we hear sort of this steady trickle of reports. They're rebuilding their missile program, but there's no hard data on how fast that's happening. They're rebuilding their nuclear program, but no actual data on whether that's really happening. Are the Iranians restarting their nuclear program? So there seems to be a gap between this sort of alarmist narrative that they're rebuilding at the speed of light and actual hard data to support that. So the first thing I want to ask you is how do you view these reports about Iranian rebuilding of nuclear and missile capabilities? And do you think that some of the reports that we're hearing about this are exaggerated, or do you think that the Iranians are actually restarting these programs at full speed?
Thank you for that question. I am certain that half of these reports are sincerely exaggerated, and half are just a result of Iranian psyops and also political American psyops against the Trump administration, against Netanyahu, because the narrative goes this way. As we cannot say that Trump and Bibi got something right and did something right, so now say, they didn't really accomplish a job, and so let's make an higayon b'shigaon and order in the mess.
Yeah.
When without, of course, my reservation is I have no pretension whatsoever to be a nuclear expert, or I don't understand on missiles. There are better people, smarter people than me at the JSA who understand in depth on missiles. But when we hear this word, whether the nuclear program was or not destroyed, let's first understand what we mean by the word destruction. Do we
Right.
mean an empty, a totally empty vacuum crater where nothing left in the round, or we mean, I would say, rather total breaking down of the functionality? I
Right.
think it's the second. If we mean physical annihilation, destruction, no, it's impossible. Even with the help of the vitamin B2 is impossible either.
Right.
But still, what we mean now that the breaking down of the functionality and their capacity to rebuild it is like it's nearly total. It's next to impossible. So can they decide theoretically to declare we are restarting, we are kickstarting our nuclear program? Yes, they can. But this question lies more in the realm of formal logic. Is there a possibility that a stone falls on my head when I head outdoors? Yes, it is possible, but still. Now,
Right.
because of this whole stuff, it's not about, I was playing with my smartphone, it fall into bathroom, and I have to buy a new one. It doesn't work this way. It requires enormous financial, scientific, military, and intelligence resources that it is very difficult to really restart it physically. Second, I'm pretty sure that being a nuclear scientist in today's Iran is a pretty dangerous job. I'm not so sure that there are very many people. And suppose they really decide to do that, they must reactivate all their secret networks of scientific
Right.
smuggling and stealing. It's very difficult, and I'm sure that neither CIA nor Mossad are not off duty. It's not that we're we're
Yeah.
not
They're not on
there.
holiday. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not on a holiday. What it does mean when we hear that Iran will never give up its nuclear program, etc., it certainly means that there is no way Iran is ready for any compromise with the US, meaning, and put simply, any negotiation with the US is not in the offing.
Hmm.
What concerns ballistic missiles, it's more complicated because they do have ballistic potential. As far as I understand, part of the shafts of these ballistic missiles are under rock somewhere in the mountains. Only
Yep.
B2 can bomb them. But still, again, as you said, no one really knows anything concrete. So we hear all these reports. They're doing something. They're trying, but what they're doing concretely. And the third thing, again, despite the obvious danger of their existing ballistic missiles, it's very difficult to launch a ballistic missile because to do that you
Yep.
must move a launcher that will always be detected. Either way, suppose they decide to attack us suddenly, they cannot do it with a complete surprise because
Yep.
still our system will detect it. Israel launched a new satellite just before the 12-day war. So it's not, even if it happens, the bottom line, even if it happens, is not as dangerous as it appears. And also, I would like to say that when I hear and see all these hysteric headlines in Hebrew, one should never discard Iran. But hi, it's a strawman argument. Who discards
Yes.
Iran?
Yes.
Who does it?
Yes. Yes.
It
Exactly.
is
I
done with a
totally
political
agree.
goal to
Yeah.
say, indeed, the government did nothing regarding Iran. If I were in
Yeah.
charge of Iran, so it's like, so
I,
it's
I I think that that's a very, very accurate assessment personally, and it makes perfect sense. Now, one of the things that also doesn't get talked about in this sort of rather hysterical atmosphere that we're describing, the media atmosphere, is the fact that the entire Iranian proxy strategy collapsed, right? So that when we went head to head with Iran and then, with American assistance, the only proxy or ally of Iran that was even willing or able to fire missiles at us were the Houthis, which is a nuisance, but not some existential threat. And so, Hamas was out of the picture. Hezbollah was out of the picture because it had obviously sustained severe damage before that attack. And, we also had the Iraqi Shiites not taking part. The Shiite militias in Syria had already been gone because of the Assad downfall. So this is, a program that they invested so many tens of billions of dollars, maybe more, into this. It did nothing for them, and they ended up fighting state to state and losing. This was exactly the scenario that they wanted to avoid. How do you see them going forward in terms of, recalibrating and building a new strategy? Are they just going to try and rebuild their ring of fire and try and do what already failed? Or do you think that they're going to try and do something new?
Well, I would say again, it's a very good question, and but I have many answers for that question, because when I look at the informal IRGC affiliated channels on Telegram, it is very interesting. Why? Because it differs from the Iranian officialdom or IRGC.
Hmm.
So there, see, like only propaganda, hold me on, like we are. You see there smart people who understand really well the situation, that they are in a deep brown substance, but they cannot challenge the system, because this is the problem they face. They understand that nothing really works, but they themselves don't know what to do, because it's also very difficult for us to get that bad guys also may have problems.
Right.
Because it's not like, and look, there's a thing I never, again, I hate sounding as an arrogant asshole, but I'm not. I never pretend I knew. No, I
But they're
knew
human
nothing.
beings, so why wouldn't they have problems? I mean, we have
Uh,
problems.
the problem is with us. We cannot get that. So I
Yeah,
remember I told many times on various occasions that Iran is a very weak country in terms of conventional military
right,
might. Yes, it is tremendous firepower, their proxies, ballistic missiles, and drones, but they have drones to recompense their shortage of
yeah,
normal air force. And
right,
by the way, I think our original sin of our arrogance and what they call it in French, technophilie, is the fact that we forgot that their technological superiority is not like a curve above the average, but it's a recompensation for our lack of strategic depth and
right.
staff number, not personal. By the same token, so
Yep,
they invested all their money in Hezbollah and the Iraqis, but they cannot help Hezbollah. They do try to smuggle some finances, pay in crypto, and so, but it's not a strategic shift. They cannot do a lot,
right,
and they are without, they have nothing, and it's even more severe than we think, because it's not only that they lost their deterrence for us.
yep,
They understand that all the hated Arabs, because they hate Arabs, even if they're pious Muslims, they hate the Arabs. They understand all the Arabs say hi. There is no reason to fear Iran anymore. And one of the signs that something is changing is these rumors that maybe the southern Yemen forces
yep,
will do something against the Houthis. It's an indication of their losing force,
right.
Iranians, because the southern Yemen forces are under the command of the Emirates. They're not
Yes,
the, so this is, but a caveat. I don't like the expression paper tiger, because when you say that someone or something is a paper tiger, it means that the danger is not real. It's not the case with Iran. It is a real danger, but they are dangerous now in other realms. So I don't believe they can restore their proxy force. It's impossible. But their terrorist networks,
Yes,
as we said, in Europe and in South America, they're alive and kicking. They
absolutely.
can do like, and second, they are more and more active in the South Caucasus against Azerbaijan and Central Asia. They are not omnipotent, of course, but they're very active there. For example, they're interested in halting the peace process between Armenia and Azerbaijan because of the Trump and Gezur corridor project. If
Yep.
it happens, Iran is just sidelined or pushed off from this project, meaning that Iran cannot unplug a very important commercial route, which is very important for us and for the West.
Hmm.
They're actively working to stop it because Armenia depends on Iran, and Iran is interested. It's very interesting. They're interested to uh, in meddling in Armenian elections because
Wow.
to have this project accomplished, Pashinyan, Armenian president, needs to amend Armenian constitution, and to do that, he needs to win elections. And at this point, both Russia and Iran, each one of different reasons, may be interested in meddling in these elections because Armenian Church works actively with both Iran and Russia. And there are very many interesting things, and I think no one has ever heard about this importance which represents Armenia for Iran.
Right. So the Iranian interest in this context is to maintain this geostrategic corridor, this trade corridor, right? And they're scared of losing it because if Armenia and Azerbaijan finalize their peace treaty, Iran basically loses access to that. Is that correct?
Yes, yes, and Armenia doesn't need any more Iran, which of course frightens Iran because they see, of course, Azerbaijan as the center of both NATO, CIA, Mossad, and everything together, but they are
Right.
active there. There are also very many economic interests there because Iran fears Turkey in Central Asia because Turkey has many things to offer. Iran has nothing to offer. It's a destructive force, totally. But what is, I think, very important to always hold in mind for us that it is never binary. Iran is weak and doesn't represent a danger in this realm, but frankly speaking, they're way more experienced and gifted in psyops, propaganda war, political warfare than we are.
Right.
There, the region will never look at, despite its importance. They're very active.
Right.
Because we suffer in Israel, I think there is something akin to America, where polarization has been a revision. Does Iran want to destroy us or not? Well, give me a report. It doesn't work this way.
Right. Right. Very, very interesting. And, I would just add that Iran being a wounded animal, which is what I take away from your description, wounded animals are also sometimes very dangerous. So I hope that, and I assume, and I actually fully really trust our intelligence community on this because the capabilities that they've demonstrated back in June were so breathtaking, so phenomenal that my faith in them regarding the Iranian arena is full. And I very much hope that there's vigilance to the idea of Iran trying to do something very dangerous, even by proxy, something that they haven't tried to do before, to try and make up for their stinging defeat back in June. Let me ask you a question about internal Iranian dynamics. One of the things that we are obviously all hoping to see is the Iranian people, not, of course, the base of the regime, but the Iranian middle classes and the people of many of the people of Tehran, the capital, and the people, the millions and millions of Iranians who understand that this regime is leading them nowhere. but to accept, from one black hole to another. And when will they get the courage to begin acting against the regime after they see, the Israeli Air Force take over their skies? Seeing this must have been very humiliating for the regime after all of the, propaganda about what they're going to do to the little Satan and the big Satan. And here they see, literally see Israeli jets in their skies for 12 days. But we haven't seen this setback translated into political instability yet. Of course, by the time I even post this video, it could change. We don't know. But what do you think it would take? How close do you think we might be? And of course, this isn't a science, so I'm not asking for any precise prediction, but how unstable or stable do you think this regime really is?
Thank you again. It's very interesting. Look, because of course I even don't pretend to be objective because I am in love with the Persian language and Iranian culture. I talk to Iranians. So the same feeling like, talking to Soviet nationals. The
Right.
regime is, by contrast to Gaza, when after the massacre of Hamas, I haven't spent a week without extensive reading in Arabic and Persian. And I have never seen a one sign of humanity in Arabic. So Gaza is Hamas, Hamas is Gaza, and okay, whoever thinks otherwise, please give me your evidence. In
Right.
Iran, it's totally different. It has nothing to do with that. There are very many great men and women to whom I am honored to talk, and they're normal people. But unfortunately, I also, if I dare say, being a Soviet originally, I understand how it works. The issue is here that popular uprising against a bad regime never happens. It never happens. We
Mm.
have an uprising, again, not because I unearthed the law of nature, just if we look at the history of, recent
Uh-huh.
history of it, we never see like popular uprising. Usually uprising occurs only when a regime makes effort to appear meek, liberal, or human. Then it waits for troubles. Then it happens.
Uh-huh.
Or it may happen the sine qua non for a regime, like for a revolutionary effervescence, something withering, is when there is a split among the elites, and in turn, this split occurs only when elites see an alternative. And it's not a case of Iran. Why? Because look, for
Hmm.
example, take the residents of North Tehran. They're rich and liberal people. I'm sure that if Israeli embassy is built in Iran, they will be first who will run up to there and break their legs.
Right.
But because these guys and girls are liberal, educated, and they live well. Despite all the economic
Yeah.
hardships, they live relatively well. They
Yeah.
are the last people to take Kalashnikov and to shoot on the regime. And as a great
Uh-huh.
anonymous Iranian writer wrote on a Telegram channel, he said, we Iranians are proud that we are not these primitive Arabs, and exactly because of that, we cannot behave like Golani and take like a Julani and take Freudian gas and take and take rifles. And he said an amazing thing: our youth makes effort to resemble European urbanites.
Right.
What does it mean? It means a spray in the VC, writing graffiti with a spray on the walls and being against Israel. And with that, you cannot reverse the regime. And he also speaks up for Israel against anti-Semitism, but he also analyzes in depth the Iranian regime. And again, I want to hope it will fall one day. But remember that, for example, the USSR collapsed in August 91, and there was no one single person who would
Yeah.
have been ready to protect that regime with a rifle in their hands.
Yeah,
No
I'm
one
thinking
believed.
about Yeltsin, and then there was the chaos, and then we get Putin. So that even if the regime
Yeah,
collapses, that doesn't
yeah.
mean that anything better takes its place.
Exactly. This is why, and like, there are also several interesting moments. It is not a case of the regime because, again, maybe something is underground or underway that I don't know. I don't say if I don't see anything, it doesn't exist. But there are signs. For example, before the 79 revolution, there was a very active outflow of capitals abroad. It's not
Hmm.
happening in Iran. So they, of course, they transfer money, but it's not like, people are saving their money. No split among the elites. And it's normal because if I owe my social assent to a certain system, I may have some criticisms, but doesn't mean I want to break up the system because
Right.
you leave your company only if you find another alternative, better job. Not it's not as simple as it looks. And when someone suggests to a regime change from abroad. So people think about America organizing revolutions, but people don't delve into the details of how America did. The
Mm.
point is that America didn't do it alone. Let's
Right.
take two historical, examples.
Mhm.
First one, Mossadegh, Ajax operation by CIA against
Mhm.
democratically elected Iranian prime minister. What is not unknown, but it's known, of course, that MI6 was no, and a researcher of Iran, Ann Lampton, were no less active in this operation than CIA.
Okay.
First. Second, in Iran, there was a powerful political camp like General Zahedi and others, who in business circles, military circles, who wanted to get rid of Mossadegh because part of his policies were utterly stupid.
Which
You
year?
don't
Which year are we talking about, Alex?
52.
Okay.
52. You don't try to frighten America with your potential flirt with Stalin because you want to have America on your side against the UK. It's not smart.
Right.
So as a result, these people inside Iran, they needed a kind of assistance from CIA that they got. But it's not that Kermit Roosevelt with a bottle of whiskey on a tank organized this plot. Second, Allende, Salvador Allende in Chile in 73.
Hmm.
Again, how it started. Allende started completely crazy Cuban-style policies, economic policies. He was a democratic, he was nice, but okay, you start Cuba-style policies in your country. It's no wonder that most upper middle class in Chile, including the army and the business circles, they wanted to get rid of Allende. Chile was imbued by and penetrated by KGB. There is a Metrochenarchy book by Christopher Andrew, and
Uh-huh.
it's not only CIA that was active in Chile. But anyway,
Right.
like in Iran, they wanted an assistance from CIA, and it was done.
So somebody
But it's
from the system has to call out for help.
exactly, you must have powerful political force that wants your assistance,
Right.
not that you lead everything by remote control, because again, it is not possible, not because it's not
Right.
it's not good or not bad.
So based on this formula, you don't recognize anybody in Iran that fits that bill. Even the Iranian army, which just to give a little bit of context to our viewers, the Iranians since the 79 revolution have been operating two parallel, basically armies. One is the elite IRGC, which is literally, as its name says, is designed to guard the leadership of the Ayatollahs, the leadership of the Islamic Republic, and then we have the regular Iranian army, which gets much less resources, which actually feels discriminated against in terms of the access that it gets to even political power, not to mention military power. All of the top tier capabilities go to the IRGC, the missiles, the drones, the Navy, et cetera, et cetera. So that actually seems like a structural invitation to explore, tell me if you think differently. Maybe the Iranian army itself, if anybody, maybe is feels that the system is hopelessly biased against them, maybe it's the Iranian army?
Unfortunately, unfortunately, it's not the case.
Hmm.
You're right. So it is true that at the beginning it was exactly as you describe it. Khomeini, for example, never trusted Iranian pilots, and so they invented their own air force, etc., etc. But the situation alternated since then. The army underwent very serious purges, and to, to date, they are completely, and ideologically, they completely fit the party line, the imam line. They
Uh-huh.
do have mutual grievances that must be exploited, but you cannot exploit them on ideological basis, but rather by virtue of the grudges they have over money, because they ideologically are the same, but still, you man, why you get more bucks than me? We are working the same. It's not
Right.
just so this exists, but one must be very skillful to exploit that, because you must again, we need KGB capacities, because also let everyone remember that real demagoguery and propaganda and psyop works only on the condition to be at least partially true. If
Right.
you concoct lies,
Right. Right.
it never
Understood.
holds.
Yeah, yeah, very interesting. And I'm sure that there have been very successful infiltrations of the Iranian system, and some of those enabled at least the phenomenal achievements that we saw back in June. So I'm sure that our people know what they're doing and are exploiting every opportunity that they can find. But it's always interesting, as you say, to delve into the structural weaknesses of Iran and to do that in a way that's at high resolution rather than these sort of constant, headlines that we hear about this,
Yeah.
Iran that's ready to go back into war. As you say, the image that they're fostering on a daily basis, probably also domestically, they're trying to present that image of strength as well. Alex, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. I really want to thank you for this. I have other questions as well, but I think we're nearing the end of the hour, and I know that it's stormy outside, and you might have to travel as well. So I'm going to leave you enough time for that as well. So thank you very much for taking part in this podcast, and I very much hope that we can do this again, hopefully sooner rather than later.
Thank you.